Welcome to this class, Installing Linux, a Beginner's Guide. This short introduction is a companion guide to my class, Linux Launch Learning Basic Linux Skills with the C-Model Framework. Many people want to learn Linux, but the first step is getting a Linux distribution up and running in a way that's not too disruptive. In this lesson, we'll be installing Ubuntu Linux. There are actually 6 ways to start using Linux, and we will briefly touch on each one of these. The first option is to use a live USB without persistence. There are 3 things you would need if you wanted to use Linux in this way. You would need a USB. You will need something like Rufus to create the bootable USB. You can see the URL here on the screen where you can download and run Rufus. And you'll need a Linux ISO like Ubuntu or Linux Mint downloaded onto your computer. We'll see how to get this ISO later in this series. You would then run Rufus, point it to the ISO on your computer, and create the bootable USB. Then you can restart your computer into the BIOS. This involves a keyboard shortcut like pressing F2 or another key as the computer is booting up. You would then choose to boot from the USB, and that will start Linux. And you can then run Linux Live from your computer without it making any changes to your device. The only problem is that any documents you create will be lost once you reboot. Now the second option is to use a live USB, but with persistence. This will allow you to run Linux without making any changes to your current PC, but will also allow the work you do to persist across sessions. It creates a persistent volume that will save the changes so they will be there the next time you boot into your USB. This involves the same process as the first option, but as you create the USB using Rufus, you can choose to create the persistent volume where you can save your data. The third option is to create a virtual machine. For this option, you will install a hypervisor, something like VirtualBox. You can see the URL on your screen. Just go to that site and download the software and install it on your computer. You'll also need a Linux ISO like Ubuntu, and this will allow you to have a full functioning Linux system on your current computer. You can also take advantage of the snapshot feature, so if you mess anything up on your system, you can restore a previous version and be right back up and running. The fourth option is that you can install Linux on an old PC, or any PC for that matter. But if you have an older PC, you can install Linux as the main operating system on that computer and keep your current PC for other purposes as you're learning Linux. For this option, you would create a USB just as we talked about with the first 2 options. But when you boot into that USB, instead of just running Linux Live, you will choose the install option and install it to the entire disk. It will then be the main operating system on that computer. So it's a dedicated computer dedicated to your Linux operating system. The fifth option is to dual boot alongside of Windows, and this will allow you to boot into either Windows or Ubuntu. If your current computer is using Windows, you would just boot into the USB, choose the install option, but instead of installing Linux to the entire disk, you choose the option Install alongside Windows. And then each time you boot, you will see a boot menu where you can choose which operating system to boot into, whether Windows or Linux. Now, you have to have enough space on your computer to create a partition for Linux. As you can see, this will also modify the drive on your computer, so it's best practice to back up your current computer in case anything goes wrong. The sixth option is that you can just use Windows Subsystem for Linux, also called WSL. You can read more about this option at the URL that you now see at the bottom of your screen. This runs Linux like a container in your current system, and this can be a great way to run Linux on the computer that you use for your day-by-day operations. But it doesn't give you the complete capabilities of Linux, as there's limited hardware access. For the purposes of learning Linux, however, or just employing its basic capabilities in your current workflow, it can be a great option. In this class, we'll be installing Linux as a virtual machine, so option number 3 is what we'll be doing. In the next video, we will learn how to get the software that we need to start the installation process, and I will see you in the next video.